Buy now, pay later isn't helping you budget, it's tricking your brain into throwing money away. It's a system engineered to get you to spend more, faster, and the moment you fall behind, the retailer wins and you lose. So in this video, I'll break down how buy now, pay later companies make money even when you can't pay, and why the riskiest part of BNPL isn't what you think it is. So buy now, pay later has become one of the easiest ways to shop, mostly because it looks simple and feels light. You get what you want right away, yet you only pay a small piece of it up front, and the rest gets split into a few payments over the next few weeks or months, with no interest and no credit check, which makes it sound like a great deal. But what's really happening is you're taking on a short-term loan. And just because there's no interest doesn't mean there's no cost. The main reason it feels easy is because you're not looking at the full price anymore, you're looking at smaller amounts. That $200 jacket doesn't seem that expensive when all you have to pay is $50 today. And that's exactly how the system works. It lowers the price in your mind without lowering the price in your wallet. Now, if you only use BNPL once in a while and you're on top of every payment, then it might not be an issue. But the problem is, most people don't just use it once. They use it again and again, and those small payments start piling up. And before you know it, you've got 5 or 6 of them hitting your account every week, and once you lose track of even one of them, that's when the trouble starts. Late fees, frozen accounts, and in some cases, even hits to your credit score. So while it might not feel risky at first, it can go sideways quickly if you're not careful. And while on the surface it looks like you're the one getting the advantage, the real winners in this setup are the businesses behind it. Because once you see how much they're making off it, the whole system starts to make a lot more sense. When stores add BNPL as a payment option, people usually spend more. In fact, some of the biggest BNPL companies say it can boost the average order by as much as 40% or more just by breaking down the price into smaller numbers. And that's one of the reasons why stores are pushing it hard. Because instead of making you feel the full cost up front, they're only showing you the first payment, and that makes it way easier to say yes. You don't think twice, and the store makes the sale. So even if the business gives up a small fee to the BNPL company, they're still making more overall because you're buying more than you planned. And the BNPL companies don't just handle the payments, they're working directly with the stores to make the whole checkout experience smoother and faster. They help design what you see at checkout, push out special offers, and find ways to keep you spending. It all looks easy, but the system is built to get you to buy faster and spend more, all while making it feel like you're not really spending that much at all. But even though helping stores sell more is a big part of BNPL, that's not where the real money's made, because what's actually driving this whole system is what happens when payments don't go as planned, and that is where things start to cost you a lot more than you expected. Every time you use BNPL, the store pays a fee to the BNPL company, usually somewhere between 4 and 6% of the total sale. And that's how they make money on the surface, but where things really take off is when people don't stick to the plan. Because the moment you miss a payment, you get hit with late fees. And if you roll into a longer term plan with interest, then that interest rate can end up looking a lot like what you'd see on a credit card. And that is where the real profits start stacking up. But it doesn't stop there. BNPL companies track what you buy, when you buy, how often you buy, and then they use that data to target you with more offers, more ads, and more reasons to keep spending. So they're not just giving you a way to pay, they're building a system that keeps you in their world longer. Some of them are rolling out loyalty programs, virtual cards, and even their own shopping apps, all designed to lock you in. So while it might look like just another payment option, it's actually a full-fledged business model built around keeping you spending as often as possible. And now that you know where the money is really being made, let's take a deeper dive into what happens when things don't go as planned, because that's where the biggest risks start to show up. BNPL can look harmless when everything is running smoothly, but it doesn't take much for the whole thing to get out of control. When you're juggling multiple purchases across different apps with different due dates, it's easy to lose track. And since most BNPL services don't give you one simple place to manage it all, you end up flying blind unless you're checking every single account manually. And once you miss a payment, it doesn't just stop at a small fee. Your account can get locked, your credit score can take a hit, and in some cases, you might get reported to a collections agency. So I can't stress this enough. Just because it's not a credit card doesn't mean it's risk-free. The damage can still show up later when you apply for a loan or a mortgage, and that missed payment shows up on your report. But what's worse is how normal this all feels, because BNPL makes debt seem casual, even for small, everyday stuff you probably don't even need. It lowers your guard, and once that happens, it becomes easier to say yes to things you wouldn't normally buy. And the companies behind it aren't trying to slow you down, they're counting on you to keep going. That's the part that sneaks up fast, because one missed payment might not seem like a big deal, but if you keep stacking them, it adds up and it gets harder to fix. Now, this wouldn't be such a big deal if there were proper systems in place to catch these problems early, but right now, those protections just aren't there. And that means that the responsibility is on you to know exactly what you're doing, so let's look at why that matters more than ever. Unlike credit cards, which have clear protections built in, like how interest is disclosed, how disputes are handled, and how payments affect your credit, BNPL has mostly been doing its own thing without much oversight. But that's slowly starting to change. In the US, regulators are starting to push for clearer rules, and some of the same protections that apply to credit cards are likely going to be required for BNPL too. But for now, it's still in that gray area where you don't always know how your credit will be affected, what happens if you want to dispute a charge, or what the fees really look like until you're already deep into a plan. And that gap creates problems, especially when something goes wrong. So if you get charged for something you didn't buy, or there's an issue with the return, then you don't have the same safety net that you'd have with a credit card. Most BNPL apps don't give you a simple way to pause payments while things get sorted out. And when it's your bank account getting hit directly, you can't afford to be stuck waiting around. So while better rules are probably coming, you can't rely on them today. So until then, you need to be extra clear on what you're signing up for, and you've got to stay on top of every single payment, because the system isn't built to protect you if things go sideways. Now, to be clear, BNPL isn't always a bad move. There are times when it can work in your favor if you use it the right way. Let's say your laptop dies and you need a new one today, but rent is due in 2 days and cash is tight. Well, using BNPL to delay the cost for a couple weeks could give you some much needed breathing room without dipping into your savings or paying credit card interest. But here's the key, you still need to have the money coming in to cover it. If you're just using BNPL because you're short every month, then it's not a fix, it's a warning sign. At the same time, BNPL can also make sense in situations where you've already planned for the expense, like renewing your car insurance, covering annual fees, or picking up a few work essentials when the timing just doesn't line up with your pay schedule. If the money's already budgeted and splitting the cost over a few weeks helps you stay on track without dipping into your savings, then it can be a practical move, but only if you're keeping a close eye on every payment and making sure it still fits within your month-to-month cash flow. Because the second you lose track or start using BNPL to cover gaps you haven't planned for, it stops being a buffer and turns into a problem. BNPL only works when it's used to smooth out short-term timing, not to stretch beyond what you can actually afford. And that habit of pushing payments down the line might feel harmless in the moment, but it's exactly what keeps you stuck, because the smarter move doesn't come after the purchase, it happens before the money even leaves your account. So putting money aside before you spend it gives you more control than any buy now pay later app ever will. And if you want to avoid stress, avoid fees, and actually stay on top of your money, this is how you do it. Let's say you've got your eye on something that costs $180, and instead of splitting that into 4 payments after you buy it, you do it the other way around. You set aside $30 a week, and in 6 weeks, the money's there. So now you can buy it outright with no payments chasing you, no surprises hitting your account, and no one else in control of your schedule. Because what also happens during those 6 weeks is you get time to think. And by the time the money's saved, you might still want to buy it, or maybe you'll realize that you actually don't. Either way, you're in a better spot because you didn't lock yourself into anything and you avoided making an impulsive purchase. And if something comes up while you're saving, maybe a flat tire or a bill that you didn't expect, then you can pause without worrying about late fees or missed payments. And that's something you'll never get with BNPL, because once you start those payments, there's no going back. So remember, this isn't about saying no to spending. It's about making sure the money's there first so you can say yes without stress. And over time, that shift changes everything, because you're not stuck reacting to your money anymore. You're actually in control of it. So buy now, pay later might look like a simple way to stretch your budget, but once you see how the system actually works, it's pretty clear that it's not designed to benefit you at all. But there's something else I didn't understand for most of my life that's flipped the way I think about money, stress, and freedom, and it might just be the most important mindset shift I've ever made. So to find out what it is and how you can reshape the way you handle your money, watch this video next.